So I'm a man now. Like you?
No. We are not men. We are more than that.
Bonjour, bienvenue sur JeuxActu, bienvenue dans cette nouvelle vidéo. Aujourd'hui, on va vous parler de God of War et regardez, je suis à côté de son game director, son réalisateur, monsieur Cory Barlog. Cory, nice to meet you.
Very good to meet you.
You're mostly known as for being the game director of God of War 2, but you also did work on the first and the third episode. What made you come back to Santa Monica after those years away and after taking some distance with the IP?
I also wrote the script for God of War Goes to Sparta.
Oh, yeah.
I had been kind of working with a bunch of people throughout the years. I went out and one of the main motivations for me leaving was realizing I need creatively to spread out a little bit. I have a lot that I don't know. So I wanted to go out and learn. And throughout that process, all the things that I ended up learning, I realized when I left, I thought, I think I still have another God of War story in me. And as I started getting closer to the time when I came back, I realized, like, okay, I really do want to tell another story. Partially because I love making games at Santa Monica. Like, having worked at a bunch of other places and see how everybody works, the most sort of comfortable, creative experiences I've ever had have been at Santa Monica, right? I've never kind of had that experience where I felt like, man, the partnerships that I made with people there allowed me to create things far beyond what I could have ever initially imagined.
Okay. And on the story standpoint, this new God of War is a follow-up to the previous game. Why didn't you call it God of War 4 or 5 if we take the Ascension episode into the accounts?
It's a good question. So one of the things is once you put a number past something, you make people feel like they have to play all the previous ones to actually get into this. And a very big aspect of this game is to feel like if you've never played God of War, you can still get into this game by playing this game. If you have played God of War, you have more insight into who this character is. You have more insight into all the little Easter eggs and all the references that are made there. But the reality is, if you've never played, you still understand the overall story. This is a perfectly sort of self-contained experience that isn't requiring you to have jumped into it. So it's like, for me, I don't want to jump in on episode 15 of a television show, right? I'm going to go back and want to watch all of those. Whereas in this one, it's kind of like, this is a whole new sort of branch off.
Before the game was officially announced, rumors were suggesting that God of War could have a new hero. Can we imagine a God of War without Kratos? Is it possible for you?
That's an interesting question. I think for me, very, very quickly when I got there, I realized that Kratos is intrinsically God of War. Right. We had a lot of debates, I think, not only with some of our own people in the studio, but some of the people in the wider company about whether or not Kratos was integral to the overall experience. And I think when I kind of gave them the initial pitch, everybody said, no, I can see that. I think we could have started and brought a new hero in, but I don't know, I'm somewhat masochistic. I want to take on a really hard challenge. And I think a hard challenge is to take a character like Kratos, who is, anti-hero, that some people had said, I really don't like this guy. And I want those people to say, I felt for him, right? Yeah. I actually rooted for him by the end. That would be an interesting turnover.
But this time you introduce his son, so maybe it can be the next hero.
Yeah, part of the initial pitch was saying, investing players in the idea of training the next hero of the franchise, right? I don't know how soon something like that would happen, but it is an interesting aspect of feeling invested, right? So that I didn't want to end up in a situation where, hey, you start the game and all of a sudden you're playing as Atreus and Kratos is not there. It's like, no, this is Kratos' story. You are seeing everything from his perspective, but you are also kind of training the next generation.
Yeah, of course. And we got that Kratos is depicted as more human and vulnerable in God of War, but after 4 games of open violence and brutality, how do we make such a character believable as a simple and fragile human?
Delicately. That is honestly one of our biggest challenges. In the early portion of the game, we had the scenes that were leading up to E3 2016, when he and his son are hunting at the beginning of the game, we rewrote that, 30, 40 times. Because each time we were finding the new tone of Kratos and his interactions. At some point he was too calm. He was Qui-Gon Jinn with his kid, right? Or he's too mean. This is like a child abuse simulator, right? And it was just like finding the right sort of balance is very difficult. Right? And being able to feel like you earn your way to that. That's the other thing, is that he's not very good at being a dad, being vulnerable and being open for quite some time into the game. And you feel like you're going along that ride. You feel like you're going to earn the moment when he reaches over and actually pats his kid on the back. It takes a long time to get to that point, but you feel like you actually took part in that. And it is a very, very difficult thing to do. It took the cumulative effort of a lot of very smart people several years to get there.
When I played the demo just right here, I have another feeling, because you change the control of the game. You don't hit by hitting the square or the triangle button, but now with the R2 and R1, why did you change the control aspect?
Well, we have the camera control on the right analog stick, so having to bounce back and forth between the face buttons for attacks and to be able to control the camera seemed a little bit too cumbersome. So initially we started talking about what if we put everything up top. And we still have a lot of people, even in the later playtests, that said, I want to be able to remap the controls. I like square, square, triangle. And we knew that that's not going to work very well. But we said, oh, you know what? We'll put it in there and let people kind of switch to it. And a lot of people had experience when they switched to it, they realized, oh, this doesn't work very well, right? Because it is so much dependence on controlling the camera, being able to aim where you need to aim. So yeah, it was more of a facet of the camera change dictated a whole new control scheme.
During E3 2017, you told Eurogamer that you thought about the Egyptian mythology. You put aside because you needed to focus on Kratos' story, and because the Egyptian mythology was too complex to keep enough intimacy with the main character that you said.
Well, it's interesting, because at the time, what I was really saying is, in Norse myth, I was able to make things very barren and sparse, right? We're in a period of time that is not only preceding the Viking era, but is preceding the migration of the Europeans to Northern Europe. So it's a very barren time when we're positing the monsters and the gods live there. And really, I think to do the Egyptian right, you need to be in the period of time of very bustling cities, because the gods were kind of the pharaohs, right? The pharaohs were sort of the earthly incarnations of the gods. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, but I think to do it right, you'd have to have a lot of population, which then starts to compete with that sort of story between two characters. So it sort of fit, I think, the introduction to Kratos and Atreus in this world is very isolated, right? That is very hostile completely towards them, and only a few people are even at all that friendly.
And that's my question. Will the next God of War games change the setting with each new episode? Is it possible that we can consider it?
I don't know if it'll be the next one, but I think this concept of saying the first chapter in his life was the Greek era of games. Kratos being introduced as the anti-hero, right? His early life. And now we've moved into the Norse era, where he is sort of being introduced as the struggling father, right? And as we finish these stories, we might move on to another era of mythology, because I think he can really kind of crisscross and interact with so many of them. Will it be Egyptian? I don't know. I mean, we have so many different mythologies that are fascinating and exciting.
And in early January, you told Game Informer that you wanted to turn God of War into an IP as strong as Uncharted and Assassin's Creed. What's the idea to broaden the audience, make it a yearly franchise?
I don't know if that was to indicate mechanically or even the time of releases, as much as, when we were doing early investigations on God of War when I came back, they did something called a brand health study, right? So they were looking at, what do people think of God of War? And the quote that came out of it that stuck with me the most was, they said, God of War is like my dad's muscle car, I don't really want to drive it, but he thinks it's really cool. Assassin's Creed is like this cool McLaren sports car, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think, you know, the truism underneath that was we hadn't really evolved, right? We hadn't really been aware of the whole industry and said like, oh, we can keep moving forward. So I think part of the idea of saying that was I want a lot of people to play this game. I'm going to work 5 years on this thing. I don't want to do this for 5 people. I want this to be hugely played, right? So it's not even the success as much as it's I want a big audience, right? Because it gives me even more feedback. It lets us know that we can evolve even further, but I definitely don't want to be on a yearly release thing. That's way too much stress. It's hard enough making these games in several years, let alone in one.
I understand. I'd like to show. Oh, how did you?
I know.
Okay, you know that photo?
That's PSX.
PSX, yes. During the last PSX, the pictures was widely shared, especially on Twitter. For me, it's represent the last stand of solo narrative games, which is the opposite of the trend of multiplayer open world and loot box filled games now. Do you think that the solo narrative games are threatened today or in the near future?
No. I get sad when I hear people talk about them as being, you know, dinosaurs or like what do you need them for, but I think there will always be a place for really well done single player games, just like there'll be a place for really well done multiplayer games, cooperative and competitive. Like I think the beautiful thing about our industry is the diversity of experiences that you can offer, all the way from independent games that just focus on one core concept or tone, all the way up to these sort of AAA games that are both, you know, competitive or single player. For me personally, I love that Sony has sort of reaffirmed the dedication to great single player titles. You know, that Detroit and Days Gone and Spider-Man and God of War. This is an awesome year for single player games and for Sony. And I don't think I would want to make any games that were not focused around the narrative and the why. Like that's to me why I play games. I don't want to just play a game to just blow somebody's head up, and I'm not as skilled a gamer as so many other people, so the skill-based gaming is not necessarily my forte. It's not a bad thing by any stretch. It's just, for me, I am more excited about being immersed in a world and seeing somebody's point of view come to life inside of a game.
Okay, I want to do something funny, maybe something weird with you.
Okay.
You are the father of God of War.
Yes.
You are so a strong person, I think. I'd like to do a game with you, arm wrestling. Is it possible to do a arm wrestling with you?
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah? Okay, so... Bon les amis, une grande première pour nous ici sur JeuxActu. Je vais proposer un petit jeu à Cory, à savoir faire un bras de fer parce que c'est le papa de God of War. Et on sait, Kratos c'est quelqu'un qui est assez puissant, assez musculeux. Alors je veux savoir si dans la vraie vie, Cory est aussi fort que son héros, son personnage principal. Alors c'est parti, are you ready, Cory?
I am
for
ready.
arm wrestling?
Yes, all
okay,
right, let's do
go.
this. All
So-
right, look, this is not, this is the setup of all setups. All right,
Yeah, so-
very good.
so-
All right, should we lock underneath? Is that like, how do you do that? No.
I don't know, I'm not very specialized in
See,
arm wrestling.
neither of
but-
us know anything about what we're doing. This is going to
So
be fantastic.
in
All right,
3
ready?
points?
All right, go.
Okay, let's go. And don't fake.
All right, I'm
Okay?
not going to fake it.
Okay, 1, 2,
I will legitimately lose.
Il est fort. Je confirme, et c'est pas du fake, hein, c'est vraiment. Oh là là.
I'm turning
Okay.
red. Wow.
3 points, on a dit 3 points.
All right.
1, 2, 3. J'abandonne, c'est bon, j'ai perdu. Ok.
We'll edit all that out.
Bravo, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. That was
Truly
wonderful.
the father of creator. We have the truth right now.
Oh,
So, thank you.
thank you very much.
And have a good journey here in Paris.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whew.